I walked up to my own driveway, coffee in one hand, briefcase in the other, when two security guards blocked my path. One of them barked, "Sir, you're trespassing! This property belongs to the Willow Creek HOA. I froze for a second. Not because I was scared, but because I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. Trespassing? On my own house? The same house I'd built 15 years ago, paid off in full, and kept in pristine condition? I took a slow breath, trying not to laugh. "You might want to check your records again," I said calmly. But before I could say more, one of them reached for his radio. "We got a male, mid-40s, refusing to leave private property. Requesting police backup." That's when I realized this wasn't just some mix-up. This was personal. When the patrol car rolled up 5 minutes later, I already knew what was coming. The officer looked nervous as he stepped out, glancing at the HOA president standing smugly near the mailbox. Her name was Nancy Fuller, a woman who believed the world revolved around her HOA rulebook. She crossed her arms, smiled like a queen, and said, "That's him, officer. He's been warned before." "Warned before?" That was news to me. "Sir," the cop said, "I'm going to have to ask you to step off the property until we clear this up." "Officer," I replied, "you can check the deed. My name's right there, Judge Ethan Cole." The cop blinked. "Judge?" "Yeah," I said, reaching into my coat and pulling out my ID. "Superior Court of Johnson County. And you're about 5 seconds away from arresting a sitting judge for entering his own property." The color drained from his face. The HOA president's smirk faded faster than a cheap paint job in the sun. But this wasn't over. See, a month earlier, I'd temporarily moved out while my kitchen was being remodeled. I left the house empty but well-maintained. The HOA apparently decided an unoccupied home violated community standards. They'd issued citations, fines, and eventually a notice claiming the property had been abandoned. Without a single court order, they tried to seize it under some shady internal policy, and now they were trying to have me arrested for stepping back onto my own land. I could have blown up right there, but years on the bench had taught me patience. Instead, I watched Nancy carefully, memorizing that smug look. "You're going to regret this," I told her quietly. "Oh, I doubt that," she said. "We run things here, Judge, or not. You'll see." She turned and strutted away while the officer apologized awkwardly and left. The guards backed off, muttering under their breath. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the no trespassing sign they'd hammered into my lawn. That's when it hit me. They thought they could bully me the same way they bullied everyone else in this neighborhood. I'd heard stories, people fined for leaving their trash cans out too long, for having the wrong color of mailbox, even for planting the wrong type of flowers. Nancy and her board ran this HOA like a private dictatorship. But they'd just made one mistake too many. That evening, I sat down in my temporary apartment and opened my laptop. I pulled up the HOA's charter, their bylaws, and the legal filings they'd so carelessly thrown together over the years. And within 10 minutes, I found it one glaring violation big enough to bring their entire operation down. They'd been collecting fees and issuing fines under an outdated charter that hadn't been renewed with the county for almost 6 years. In legal terms, they were operating without standing. Every citation, every fine, every notice of violation, completely invalid. I leaned back, smiled, and whispered, "Well, Nancy, let's see how you like playing by the rules now." The next morning, I filed a motion for injunction against the HOA, citing unauthorized operation and unlawful seizure of private property. It didn't take long for word to spread. Within 48 hours, the entire Willow Creek board was scrambling, hiring lawyers and calling emergency meetings. But I wasn't done yet. I scheduled a hearing, my courtroom, my jurisdiction. Legally, I should have recused myself, but I had another judge lined up to oversee it. My only job was to ensure every piece of evidence was airtight. I spent nights reviewing documents, pulling every HOA violation complaint from the last 5 years. The list was long, too long. They'd fined a veteran for hanging the American flag, too, close to the curb. They'd harassed an elderly widow for planting roses outside the approved pallet. It was disgusting. When the hearing day finally came, Nancy arrived in her signature blue suit, chin high and arrogance in full display. She didn't even glance at me as she walked past, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She still had no idea how bad things were about to get, Because when you try to arrest a judge for trespassing on his own property, you'd better be ready for what comes next. Nancy sat at the front of the courtroom table, tapping her pen against a stack of neatly organized papers, pretending she had everything under control. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her jaw. Her lawyer, a slick guy in an overpriced gray suit, kept whispering in her ear, trying to calm her down. The gallery behind them was full of curious homeowners, people who had once been too scared to stand up to her. Not today. When Judge Marilyn Torres entered the courtroom, everyone stood. I took my seat quietly behind the plaintiff's table, my face calm, my hands steady. I wasn't there as a judge today. I was there as a homeowner who'd been wronged. Case number 22314, Judge Torres announced. Ethan Cole versus Willow Creek Homeowners Association. The words echoed through the courtroom. Nancy didn't even look at me. Her lawyer did the talking first. Your Honor, the HOA acted within its rights to enforce community standards. The plaintiff had neglected his property and neglected. I interrupted, unable to hold back. There wasn't a single weed on that lawn. Judge Torres gave me a small nod, allowing me to continue later. I sat back, letting the lawyer hang himself with his own arrogance. He pulled out a series of photos. My empty driveway, my covered windows, the temporary for sale sign my contractor had accidentally left up for 2 days. Clearly, the lawyer said, the property was unmaintained and appeared abandoned. The HOA, under its charter, had the right to issue enforcement actions. I smiled faintly. Charter? I asked. He turned, frowning. Yes, the charter. Would you mind reading the date on that charter? I asked. He hesitated, flipping through his documents. 2017. The courtroom went dead silent. Judge Torres leaned forward. Mr. Blake, she said to the HOA lawyer, are you aware that HOA charters in this county require renewal? Every 3 years? The color drained from his face. I, was not aware of that, Your Honor. Nancy's eyes went wide. She looked at him like he'd just confessed to a crime, which in a way he had. I stood holding up a thick binder. For the record, Your Honor, the Willow Creek HOA's charter expired in 2020. They have continued collecting fees, issuing fines and enforcing property seizures without legal authority. I have county records, certified by the clerk's office, verifying that renewal was never filed. Gasps filled the room. Someone in the back whispered, they've been illegal this whole time? Judge Torres adjusted her glasses. Mr. Blake, this is a serious matter. If the HOA has been operating without standing, everything they've done for the past 5 years could be null and void. Nancy jumped to her feet. This is absurd. We run this neighborhood. You can't just... Mrs. Fuller, Judge Torres interrupted sharply. Sit down. You'll have your turn. The power dynamic shifted instantly. For years, Nancy had ruled over these people with fear. Now she looked small, cornered. I flipped to another section of my binder. Your Honor, I also have affidavits from 23 homeowners describing harassment, unlawful fines, and retaliation for questioning HOA authority. One family was fined $500 for installing a wheelchair ramp. Another was threatened with foreclosure for missing 2 payments during a medical emergency. Judge Torres's tone hardened. If even half of this is true, this board could face serious civil penalties. Nancy's lawyer stood up again, sweating. Your Honor, my client had no knowledge. Oh, save it, I cut in. I've seen the emails. Every single fine and threat had her digital signature. She knew exactly what she was doing. Nancy's voice cracked. You can't prove that I turned my laptop around, showing the screen. This is your email, Nancy. You CC'd yourself. The courtroom erupted in whispers and muffled laughter. Judge Torres banged her gavel to quiet the room. I wasn't laughing. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just wanted justice. The hearing stretched on for hours. Every piece of evidence painted the same story. An HOA gone rogue, using power as a weapon instead of a responsibility. By late afternoon, Nancy sat silent, her confidence shattered. Finally, Judge Torres sighed. This court finds that the Willow Creek Homeowners Association has operated without valid charter authority since June 2020. All enforcement actions, fines, and liens issued during that period are hereby vacated. The HOA's powers are suspended pending further review. A collective gasp filled the room. Homeowners hugged each other. Some even cried. Years of frustration washed away in an instant. Nancy stood up, trembling. "You can't do this. This community will fall apart without us." I looked at her calmly. "No, Nancy, it'll finally have a chance to heal." She glared at me, eyes burning with fury. "You think this is over?" "Oh, it's far from over," I said quietly. "Because now I'm filing for damages." Her lawyer paled. "Damages? Emotional distress? Defamation? Attempted unlawful seizure of property," I listed, counting on my fingers. "And since they called the police on me? False arrest, too." Nancy sank back into her chair, defeated. When the hearing ended, I stepped outside. Dozens of neighbors surrounded me, thanking me, shaking my hand. One older man said, "Judge Cole, we've been praying for someone to finally stand up to them." I smiled softly. "No one's above the law, not even an HOA." But deep down, I knew this wasn't finished yet. Nancy Fuller wasn't the kind of woman to back down quietly. She'd built her little empire on control, and I'd just destroyed it in a single day. That night, as I sat in my car outside my house, I noticed something strange. The lights in my living room were on. I hadn't turned them on. And there, through the window, a shadow moved. Someone was inside my house. My heart pounded as I sat in my car, staring through the window of my own house. The lights flickered slightly. And the shadow inside moved again, slow, deliberate, like whoever was there wanted me to see them. For a moment, I just sat still, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. It couldn't be Nancy. Could it? No. Even she wouldn't be that reckless after what happened in court. Or maybe she would. Power-hungry people never accept defeat. They just find new ways to fight back. I stepped out of the car quietly, leaving the door slightly open. The air was cool still. The sound of crickets, the only thing breaking the silence. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. Dialing 911 but not pressing call yet. If this was what I thought it was, I wanted to handle it myself first. As I walked toward the front door, I noticed something odd. The no trespassing sign that Nancy's guards had nailed into my lawn was lying face down. The post broken. My front door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, slowly. The house smelled faintly of paint and sawdust from the remodel, mixed with something else, cheap perfume. I followed the faint shuffle of footsteps toward the living room. And there she was. Nancy Fuller stood in the middle of my living room, her back to me, staring at the wall where the HOA's violation notices used to hang. She was holding one of them in her hand, crumpled and torn. "You really did it," she said without turning around. Her voice was lower than usual, cracked with exhaustion. "You actually destroyed everything I built." I kept my tone calm. "Nancy, you broke the law. You destroyed people's peace. I just set things right." She turned slowly. Her mascara had run, her hair was a mess. The confident, smug woman from court was gone. In her place stood someone broken, desperate. "You don't understand," she said, stepping closer. "Do you have any idea what it takes to run this community? The hours, the pressure, the constant complaints. I gave everything to keep this neighborhood perfect." "Perfect?" I said quietly. "You fined veterans for flags. You bullied widows. You threatened families. That's not perfection, that's control." She took another step toward me, eyes wild. "You think you're some kind of hero? You humiliated me! My reputation, my life, it's over because of you!" I took a step back, keeping my voice steady. "Nancy, you did that yourself. You crossed the line. It's time to face it." She clenched her fists. "You ruined me, Judge. And now you want to take my dignity too?" At that moment, something inside her broke. She lunged forward, grabbing the stack of old HOA documents from the counter and throwing them at me. Papers flew everywhere, scattering across the floor like confetti at a funeral. I didn't move. I just stood there, letting them fall. "You need help," I said softly. "Not power, not control, help." Her voice trembled. "You're going to destroy me completely, aren't you?" I sighed. "No, Nancy, the law will handle that, not me." For a second, she looked like she wanted to fight more, but instead she sank to the floor, her hands covering her face. The sound of distant sirens began to echo from outside. I hadn't realized my thumb had pressed the call button. When the officers arrived, I stepped outside to meet them. I told them she had entered my house without permission. They let her out gently, and as she passed, she whispered, "You think they'll still thank you when this place falls apart?" I didn't answer. After they drove away, I walked back inside and sat down on the couch. The house felt different, quieter, free. For the first time in months, I could breathe. A week later, the county officially dissolved the Willow Creek. HOA, a new community council formed, made up of actual residents, not self-appointed tyrants. People planted gardens, hung up flags, painted their homes the colors they loved. The air in the neighborhood felt lighter, like everyone had finally woken up from a long nightmare. As for me, I returned to my normal life. Back to court, back to the rhythm I knew best, justice. Every once in a while, I'd drive past the old HOA office. The sign had been taken down, the windows empty. But I didn't feel triumph. I just felt closure. One afternoon, an elderly woman named Mrs. Parker stopped me outside the grocery store. She'd lived in Willow Creek for over 20 years. She grabbed my hand and said, "Judge Cole, we can finally sleep peacefully. Thank you for standing up for us." I smiled. All I did was remind them of something they forgot. "What's that?" she asked. "That no one," I said, "is above the law." She smiled, nodded, and walked away. I stood there for a while, watching the sun set over the quiet streets that used to feel like a prison. And as I got into my car, I looked back one last time and whispered to myself, justice served. If you've ever been bullied by someone who thought they had power over you, remember this. Truth always wins. It might take time, but it wins. So don't stay silent. Stand up, speak out, because the moment you stop being afraid of them is the moment they lose control. If you believe in justice, in standing up to power, and in doing what's right even when it's hard, share this story. Let people know that no one, not even those hiding behind rules and titles, can silence what's fair and true.